Welcome back, everyone, to Discover Top 5, the channel where we dive into the most shocking, fascinating, and thought-provoking topics from around the world. If you're someone who loves learning about the stories behind the headlines, exploring the unknown, and uncovering things you might not hear about in the mainstream news, then you're in the right place. Here, we don't just scratch the surface, we dig deep. From the mysteries of the past to the most pressing issues of the present, we bring you the top 5 things that matter most, whether it's in the world of history, science, culture, or current events. We don't shy away from the uncomfortable truths or the dark realities of the world. We believe that understanding what's really happening out there is crucial to shaping our future. And sometimes, the most eye-opening stories are the ones you least expect. You're about to embark on a journey with us that might just change the way you see the world. So, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications, because at Discover Top 5, we bring you fresh, real, and often untold content every week. Don't miss out. This is your front row seat to some of the most incredible stories out there. Get ready, because we've got an exciting adventure ahead.
Imagine waking up in a country that was once a paradise, known for its golden beaches and green hills, only to see it crumbling before your eyes. This is the reality in Sri Lanka, where a nation once thriving has collapsed under a weight of economic mismanagement. In 2022, inflation hit a staggering 69.8%, making even basic necessities unaffordable. Long queues for fuel became the norm, while power cuts plunged cities into darkness. At the same time, the government defaulted on over $83 billion in debt, the first default in its history. The tourism sector, once the lifeblood of the country, collapsed, and leaders fled when riots broke out. The people are furious, but the worst part? Experts warn that Sri Lanka's fall might be just the beginning of a larger crisis that could spread across the region. Pakistan, one of the most populous countries in Asia, is teetering on the brink of collapse. With foreign reserves at a critical low and inflation soaring past 40%, food has become a luxury. The rupee is losing value, businesses are shutting down, and energy shortages are crippling daily life. Political chaos adds to the crisis, as protests erupted after former Prime Minister Imran Khan was arrested. The government has turned to the IMF for loans, but at what cost? The country is struggling to maintain any semblance of stability, and it's uncertain whether Pakistan will be able to recover in the next decade. Afghanistan has been reduced to a shadow of its former self since the Taliban took control in 2021. What was once a nation with potential is now a humanitarian nightmare, with 28 million people, 2/3 of the population dependent on aid. Foreign governments froze $9 billion in assets, and trade partners pulled out, causing the country's GDP to shrink by 20% in a year. Basic necessities like food and medicine are scarce, and in some areas, people are resorting to selling their children to survive. Meanwhile, women have been erased from public life, banned from work and education. Terrorism is surging, and while the Taliban promised stability, ISIS is wreaking havoc. Over 1.6 million Afghans have fled the country, but with borders tightening, there's no escape. And the worst part? There is no way out for many. Myanmar's collapse is happening in real time, largely unnoticed by the world. Since the military staged a coup in 2021, the country has descended into chaos. Thousands have died, and entire towns have been reduced to rubble. The economy has unraveled, with the local currency losing over 50% of its value, and inflation has sent food and fuel prices skyrocketing. Rebel groups control vast territories, while the government's ability to function is rapidly diminishing. With 1.5 million displaced people and half the population living in poverty, Myanmar is on the brink of total collapse. The question is, will this crisis be contained, or will it spread further? North Korea, one of the world's most isolated countries, is experiencing a silent collapse. For years, it has survived through sanctions and isolation, but now, the regime is facing a major food shortage. In 2023, reports revealed one of the worst famines in decades, with regions on the brink of starvation. Inflation is eating away at what little economy exists, and black markets are barely surviving. North Koreans are paid in food rations, but even those are becoming scarce. The government is cracking down on anyone seeking to escape, and even the elites are feeling the pressure. The country's power grid is failing, and with fewer crops being harvested, North Korea's collapse might be closer than the world realizes. Lebanon, once known as the Switzerland of the Middle East, is now in absolute ruin. The economy has imploded, with the currency losing over 98% of its value since 2019. Most people can't even withdraw money from their own accounts, and basic goods like food and medicine have become unaffordable. The Beirut explosion of 2020, one of the largest non-nuclear blasts in history, killed over 200 people and left 300,000 homeless, but no one was held accountable. The country faces widespread power shortages and businesses are closing down. Crime is rising, and people are even robbing banks to access their own money. Lebanon has no real government left to fix the situation, and experts warn it's on the verge of becoming the next Syria. Laos, known for its breathtaking landscapes, is drowning in debt. The country owes over $14.5 billion to foreign creditors, most of it to China. This debt trap has forced the government to hand over control of its power grid to a Chinese company. Inflation is out of control, with fuel prices doubling, and the local currency losing over 50% of its value. Basic necessities like food, transportation, and medicine are now out of reach for most families. To make matters worse, Laos is facing a health crisis. With a major outbreak of dengue fever, hospitals are overwhelmed, and medical supplies are running out. The future of Laos is uncertain, with many young, skilled workers fleeing the country in search of better opportunities. Bangladesh, once seen as an economic powerhouse, is now facing disaster. Factories are shutting down, the currency is collapsing, and millions are struggling to survive. Just a few years ago, Bangladesh had one of the fastest growing economies in Asia, but now, inflation has hit hard, with the Bangladeshi taka losing over 25% of its value, making imports unaffordable. The garment industry, the backbone of the economy, is collapsing as factories close and workers are laid off. Power shortages are crippling industries, and climate change is only making things worse. Rising sea levels are swallowing farmland, cyclones are destroying homes, and flooding is displacing millions. The question is, can Bangladesh recover before it's too late? Yemen, once a country known for its ancient history, is now a land of war, starvation, and economic collapse. The war has raged on for nearly a decade, displacing millions and leaving the country in ruins. Yemen's economy has crumbled, with the currency losing nearly 90% of its value. Basic necessities like food and medicine are beyond the reach of most families, and millions are literally starving. The country is split between warring factions, with no government to provide leadership or stability. Worse yet, Yemen is running out of water, and climate change is making the situation unbearable. Droughts and extreme heat are taking a toll on an already fragile environment, and the world is largely ignoring the humanitarian disaster unfolding. Kazakhstan, a vast country rich in oil and natural resources, is now teetering on the brink of collapse. Protests in 2022 erupted over government corruption, rising prices, and extreme inequality, leading to a brutal crackdown. The country's economy, heavily reliant on oil, is in serious trouble as global demand shifts and prices become unpredictable. Inflation has spiraled out of control, and the currency is losing value. Kazakhstan's political situation is even more precarious, caught between the superpowers, Russia and China. Both countries are vying for influence, and tensions are rising, especially with the ongoing war in Ukraine. Add to this Kazakhstan's environmental disasters, including nuclear test sites and chemical waste dumping, and the country's future is uncertain.
Welcome back, everyone, to Discover Top 5, the channel where we dive into the most shocking, fascinating, and thought-provoking topics from around the world. If you're someone who loves learning about the stories behind the headlines, exploring the unknown, and uncovering things you might not hear about in the mainstream news, then you're in the right place. Here, we don't just scratch the surface, we dig deep. From the mysteries of the past to the most pressing issues of the present, we bring you the top 5 things that matter most, whether it's in the world of history, science, culture, or current events. We don't shy away from the uncomfortable truths or the dark realities of the world. We believe that understanding what's really happening out there is crucial to shaping our future. And sometimes, the most eye-opening stories are the ones you least expect. You're about to embark on a journey with us that might just change the way you see the world. So, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications, because at Discover Top 5, we bring you fresh, real, and often untold content every week. Don't miss out. This is your front row seat to some of the most incredible stories out there. Get ready, because we've got an exciting adventure ahead.